great. Uh, so thank you for joining the meeting again. Today is August 30th. I think Sad already joined. Could you help me record it?
Yep, it's already started.
Okay, thank you. Uh, so I think from last time we kind of decide the volume snapshot status struct, but someone mentioned, right, for user side, how to monitor whether this snapshot is like complete already, so that the user know when they can start using it to provision volume. Last time we mentioned we use the timestamp for available at to represent this. And when the timestamp for available at is set, we say it is the whole thing complete. But I've been thinking about this and also checking our controller. So I feel that might not good enough. So here, as someone suggested, I create a timeline for snapshot controller and CSI volume driver. So can you see my screen?
Yep.
Oh, okay, great. So let's have a quick overview what happened between snapshot controller and CSI volume driver during this whole process. So at the very beginning, when users start like create a snapshot object, right? Controller will send a request, a create snapshot request to CSI driver, and CSI driver will go ahead to call like volume plugins create snapshot, and when the snapshot is cut, is taken, it should immediately send back a CSI response. And when controller receive this response, if there's no error, right, what's controller do have several things. The first, because snapshot is cut, right? So I need to update the status to set the created at as the timestamp of snapshot creation timestamp. In case of for some volume plugins, there's no uploading phase. So probably it's also return like actually ready status from the CSI response. And that means you also need to set available at equal to like timestamp T1, which means create at and available at, they are actually the same time. And the controller will also go ahead to create volume snapshot content object and store it to API server and bind those two API objects. Binds just means you specify the volume snapshot content name equal to the name you created just now. And this is not an atomic operation, right? You need to perform each operation sequentially. After this old update, create binds finishes, for some volume plugin, if there is uploading phases, the controller will keep checking, periodically checking the snapshot status. It will call CSI, let's say latest snapshot, API calls, and the CSI driver return response. When the snapshot uploading finishes, so eventually it will return the ready status. And that is when controller will set available at a different timestamp. And then that is the moment we can say this snapshot is complete, right? It's completely ready to be used. So I'm thinking we can add a Boolean value to represent this whole thing, the whole process complete, and the snapshot is completely ready to be used. Another word is, that means when you mark this snapshot complete, there's a few conditions must be satisfied. First, created at, available at should be already set. So those are two timestamps basically telling you when the snapshot is created and when the snapshot finish uploading. And also the volume snapshot content object already created, and those two objects are bound together. And if any of those like fail to set, we can now say snapshot is complete. And this timeline only shows dynamic provisioning kind of timeline workflow. Considering static provisioning, that means there is a snapshot already available from the cloud provider or some volume provider, and user just want to specify by themselves the volume snapshot content, right? They create by themselves manually, and then point to the snapshot name to that content name to that object. And the controller should be able to handle this execution too, to bind them together. So the created at and available at might not be available. So I think we can set available at by checking the snapshot status. The controller can still go ahead to checking the snapshot status, and if they see it's already ready, then it can set the available at equal to some time. But created at, it might return the correct timestamp or not. So considering static binding part, so use available at or created at is also not very accurate to represent the snapshot is complete. So here we are proposing to add a new Boolean value. We can call it, I'm not sure the name, basically to represent this status of the snapshot is complete. So for PVPVC, if think PVPVC, we typically use bound to represent a phase that the PVC is ready to be used. We can also use bound, but actually for our case, we mean the snapshot is available, right? It's finished uploading if there is uploading phase, and also it finished binding. We can also call it complete. We can call it bound. It is a Boolean value. So it's very easy for user to check, okay, the snapshot is fully complete to be ready to be used. So any question about this adding a new Boolean value to represent the status, the final status of volume snapshot? Hello?
It seems like it is kind of necessary. Looks like we have something similar in PVPVC with the conditions, and this is trying to imitate that, so I guess it makes sense.
Can I make a comment about the list snapshots? Are we polling list snapshots? Is that something that's going to happen in the controller constantly to update the status of all the snapshots? I thought it was listed that this could be an expensive operation and that we should avoid it if possible.
So when the status, let's say the bound or complete equal to true, we no longer polling this snapshot. Only when after the snapshot is created, but is available at is not set yet. So we need to know when the snapshot is complete, finish uploading. So during that period of time, we need to call this snapshot, but we can kind of reduce the overhead by using, like say, backoff, exponential backoff, so that it's at first it's polling, let's say after a few seconds, and then we can increase the polling period, because uploading might take quite a while.
Okay.
Yeah.
And to be clear, it's not fetching all the snapshots. It has a filter on there that allows you to specify only
Right.
snapshot
Only.
you care about.
Yes, exactly.
And also most storage systems do not need to do upload. So when you're done cutting the snapshot, you're done. You don't need to constantly checking the status.
Right. After available at is set, right? So there's no need to keep checking. Unless some user
Thanks for clarifying that.
Yeah, sure. Unless some user prefer, like say, they want to continue to check status in case someone, let's say, manually deleted the snapshot. But currently in our design, we say after a checking is already finished uploading and stat available at, we no longer check anymore. So adding this like boolean value seems okay for everyone. What's the name? Like any suggestions for this? We can use complete. We can use bound. Ready. Any preferences? So bound is used in PVPVC.
Yeah, it's nice to keep the consistency. I would go with bound. And just a dumb question. If we have both created and available set at the same time, that is not sufficient to indicate bound because binding is an independent operation, right?
Right.
Okay.
Right.
Okay, cool. Makes sense to me.
Question from Shai. What does it mean bound in that stage? Do we bound it to something, some different object, or bound is just say that it's complete? Because it may be confusing, the name bound.
Yes, because remember PVPVC, we have two objects, and binds them means PVC has a pointer to a PV, and we also have a pointer back to PVC. Here is the same thing. So volume snapshot binds means it has a pointer, right? You set the pointer to the volume snapshot content object. And the content object also, of course, have a pointer back to the volume snapshot. So yeah, because of this two object model, right, we have this bind situation, yeah.
So one comment, for PVCs, we use phases, and phases can be pending bound. Here we're using a Boolean. Do we want to keep them consistent, or it's okay to?
Yeah, actually phases is no longer like recommended, as we mentioned before, unless there must be a very necessary, right? Because the issue of like updating in case you have new phases. So here we just, at least for current design, we only need a Boolean value to represent everything finished, everything done, and it's ready to be used. So it's very simple and clear to you just use a Boolean value. There's no need to have like different phases, like uploading phase or, so we want to avoid doing that, like a state machine model.
Yeah, I like that too. Actually, I proposed last week that maybe created ad, available ad should only be stored on the snapshot volume content data structure. I mean, what's the value of exposing it to users? Do users care how long it took?
Yeah, yes. The user might need to resume their application, right? So they need to know when it is created, when it is the create ad is set, they can immediately resume the application. They can monitor that create ad.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, that's the main purpose for for create ad. Available ad is like it's nice to have this information so user know how long it takes to upload their snapshots. Yeah. And
Yes.
yeah. Right. So for users, okay, great.
To play devil's advocate on that, I think I disagreed with Ardalan last time, but now I'm thinking it over. The use case you mentioned was the user might want to use this information to decide when they can start their application again.
Right.
Shouldn't that process be controlled by Kubernetes, meaning we're the ones that are going to signal to the application at some point?
No, not at least not right now. So the freeze application and the unfreeze application, like outside of our volume snapshot control, at least for now, yeah. So user need to perform those operations before taking snapshot and after taking snapshot.
I mean, isn't it like a PV PVC where ideally the user should be able to read the PV object, so they should be able to read the snapshot content object as well?
User read the PV object, but user don't have the permission to read PV object.
I'm not sure what the default configuration is for RBAC for most clusters, but I imagine it should be that the end user should be able to read it but not write it. If that's the case, then it would be sufficient to put it inside the snapshot content object. But if the default is that the user has absolutely no access to the non-namespaced object, then it makes sense to put it on the namespaced object.
Okay, we can for sure double check that.
Sure.
So
we previously had two timestamp, one, two status, right? One in the volume snapshot, one in volume snapshot content, but then we decide to combine them. Yeah, just to use the one in volume snapshot because that's the one the user is checking.
So
I don't know the history, but I think one reason why PVs were non-namespace was because of security. Like you don't want to know exactly how to access a given volume. And
right, but if it depends on what the default security rules are. If the end user can read the object but not write it, then it might be sufficient to put information.
Well, let's say if you can do it, let's say read a PV content for an NFS share, you can independently maybe mount that NFS share, and that way you can access somebody else's volume.
I thought you could only read it if you have it mounted to your pod. I don't think you could just go out and read any PV readily available in the
Okay,
cluster.
that may well be the case. If that's the case, this is fine.
okay, yeah. So I think for security reason, probably a user is not allowed to get the detailed information like the ID, etc. So this is the main thing, like for volume snapshot API design. I think the rest we basically complete the design, and please review our snapshot proposal. I'll update it again. Right now, I just Jing help me for update, put bound boolean value there, and we'll also probably add a little bit more information, including the timeline. So I'm not sure this is too much or not. So basically showing when those created ad, available ad is set, and what happened between snapshot controller and the volume driver, and when the bound will be set, right, means snapshot is complete. And also we have the, I think the PR for the controller and in external snapshotter. So if anyone interested in like how a controller is designed, please review it. I think today we'll, based on our like decision, we'll also have a new version to add the bound pooling value. And I will also submit a GCE CSI driver probably this couple of days. And I'm thinking we can start testing our controller. And if anyone interested in it, they can create their own CSI volume plugins and test it. And we'll start adding like more tests, including unit test, E2E test. So for this week, right? I think the code will be ready to be tested. Any other like feedback, comments about the controller implementation or API design? And anyone like interested in having their own CSI plugin, so talk to me and Jing. So we can see how to, yeah.
Question, please. What happens if the snapshot content has some failing to be created?
So
what happened there?
If it failed to create, so first controller during create snapshot function, it will try to create volume snapshot content object 3 times. If all of them failed, we cannot mark snapshots like complete. We cannot set bound to true, right? And the snapshot controller will continue to sync. There is like a periodic sync loop for each snapshot object. And next time it sees this snapshot object, it might still create it as already set, but there is no volume snapshot content object, and it will try again. So basically, the controller will keep trying to create this volume snapshot content over and over again, like periodically, until
Is there any reason why it will fail to create this Kubernetes object? Because there is no CSI API related to that one.
There is just API server, like temporary, not available, or there's high like load on API server and it could not handle it. It should be temporary, yeah. It should not like fail permanently, unless your API server is down. I don't.
So if it's down for some reason, and 3 times over, the snapshot will be created on the storage system, but it will not be available on the Kubernetes side?
Yes, this object will not be created. So we cannot bind volume snapshot to volume snapshot content, right? So
and then if the customer wants to delete this snapshot because the snapshot was already created on the storage side.
Yeah, that's a decision we can make. So I'm thinking because controller will keep trying to create content. So as long as your API server is back, you should be able to create it and then bind them together just at a later time.
Okay, so it's not only 3 times.
I'm sorry?
So it's not only 3 times?
No, it's not only, it will like forever, yeah. It has a sync loop. So okay. Let's say every 1 minute, it always sync the volume snapshot object. If the final status is not bound yet, it will try to kind of recover from any like failed points. For example, you failed to create content before, so it should start create volume snapshot content again. Yeah. Okay. And so because of this, I don't think we need to like go ahead to delete the snapshot, the underlying physical snapshot, right? So if just because of API server is temporarily down, and you actually already create snapshots successfully, but you failed to create content one time, like at that moment, I don't think we need to delete the physical snapshot, because the controller will try to recover and create content next time when
That
it's,
makes sense.
yeah.
So Jing, the diagram seems to suggest that we set the available add field by polling, like the CO polls the CSI driver and says the available add field. What about the created add field? Does it done through polling, or
No,
we assume?
As long as snapshot CSI response returns, that moment, because CSI create snapshot call is a kind of synchronized call. So it only returned after snapshot is created, is cut.
Okay.
Yeah, and we just.
I mean, like the old Flocker driver, for example, they were doing snapshots where they were copying the whole directory, and for plugins that work that way, creation of snapshot can take a long time.
Yeah, then in that case, it will have this snapshot after it's created. Then, yeah.
And that shouldn't be a problem for the modern storage systems, like enterprise storage systems, but
right.
some of the poor man storage systems, they may take a while to create a snapshot.
Yeah, I think, well, currently the snapshots like we are using, they are all created very quickly, like in a second, and you should be able to see created very soon. Yeah.
Okay.
And in our CSI spec, yeah, we defined create snapshot is only returned after the snapshot is taken, is cut. Any other questions?
I do have a quick thing.
Yeah.
Although I suspect it's, I'll have to put it into CSI first. It's to do with snapshot groups. So currently with the controller, there's no guarantee or no way of, say if a pod has multiple PVs, there's no way of getting a consistent point in time snapshot of those multiple PVs. And so having the ability to snapshot a group of volumes at the same time and guarantee that that was at the same time would be a good feature.
Yes.
But should I take that up in the CSI spec first and maybe submit a PR?
Right. I think we briefly discussed that. Definitely we are considering as a feature, but it has a lot of great challenges to have that kind of guarantee to take snapshots consistently for a group. But if your, let's say, volume plugin has the capability of doing that, and we might be able to add as a feature, right? For us, we cannot give such a guarantee we can take a consistent group of snapshots. Only if the underlying volume plugin has this capability, so we might help to build on top of that.
Yeah, we do have the capability.
Well, the problem is we've talked about that before, and I agree it's a good capability, but the trick is it's vendor dependent, first of all. So not everybody can do it. And I think the first step would be to get a sane snapshots implementation in, and then figure out, how we want to expose vendor capabilities like continuous group snapshots and things like that. But,
yeah, that would be a nice feature. Yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
Sorry, come.
So yeah, just as we mentioned, not everyone can do that yet. So for this alpha version, we will not support that. But after this snapshot alpha feature is like stable, we can consider those kind of advanced features, definitely.
I have another question as well. Is the promote to volume aspect of this in scope for this design discussion? Have we firmed out how we expect that to work yet? Or are we going to look to address that in another discussion?
Yes, right now I think we pretty much settled on with add a data source API data struct in PVC. So this data source reference is typed local object references. So it only contains the name of the object and the kind of the object. So for snapshot, the kind would be volume snapshot, and the name would be your volume snapshot API object name. And we will work on the external provisioner, and to be able to recognize this PVC data source. It is a snapshot type, and based on this information, and provision the volume from the snapshot. And for other type of, let's say, operation like clone, they can also use the same data source object data struct, and the kind would be another PVC, for example, and the name is a PVC name. But for us, right now, we only allow snapshot, and all the other type we can validate and fail the operation until let's say another clone function available, we can open it up.
Yep, that sounds good. That's what I was kind of teasing out, is the integration with other features. So this is looking really good. I like where this is going. Right.
So the main thing is we have to go through the API review process. So for snapshot, although it is out of tree, but it is considered part of the Kubernetes features. So we still have to go through the API review. And I think the API review group, someone is start reviewing our API. And this data struct also added to the core PVC API object. So we also need to get approval. But I think it looks good, and it should be okay. At least it's promising, yeah.
Cool, thank you.
No problem. And hopefully, I will ping the API review group this week, and they give us feedback and see how it goes. And our controller code should be ready for testing. And if you are using GC, I will have the GC driver available for testing. And let me know and the team know, if you have other CSI driver you want to test.
There's also a host path driver. The PR is already there, yeah, so you can give that one a try as well. So I wonder if we should maybe add some testing instructions there so people can play with it.
Yeah, sure. Do you have recommendation?
Would that be in the driver repo? Each driver repo, like host path, under that repo, add some YAML files and instructions?
So for, let's say, PCE, we have another repo. Where is it? Sorry. I think In GC, we have a GC PD driver repo under the SIG, Kubernetes SIG repo. And I can point it out where it is later. And I'm not sure for other drivers where we should put it.
Sorry, I have one more question actually, just thought of it.
Yeah, sure.
Topology for snapshots, is that something we need to think about?
Okay, put this away, put that pillow back.
Sorry.
I'm sorry.
Because I told you to, and that's the only reason you need.
Is it Erin?
Sorry about that. Nope. Go ahead.
So I was trying to say that the topology, I think SAT is going to work on that for snapshot. Right now, we don't have that in the CSI design yet. I think SAT says he's going to work on that after the volume part is done. SAT?
We got topology for volume already. So right now we're focused on integrating the work that we've done for topology on CSI with Kubernetes. And yes, once this snapshot design lands, then we're going to take a look at topology for snapshots as well.
Right. Yeah, if you have some...
Okay, so something like a host volume snapshot, that's going to be very important.
Yeah, basically the idea that the snapshot itself is not equally available to all volumes. We need to figure out a way to express that. I think it'll be generally very similar to what we did with volumes, but with volumes, the affinity is with nodes. And in this case, we need to figure out if that's still the case with snapshots or not.
Well, if it's a host local volume, it will be with nodes, but we have other availability domains and regions that may come into play. And maybe even global more across as well.
I mean, that would be the default, would be global. And then the topology constraint would constrain it to some subset.
Okay, but it's not going to be part of the first release?
Not yet, no.
No. Okay, thank you.
Yes, so after this, like almost ready, we will definitely start talking all those things. And I think we have really a long list of things we want to add after this first initial version. And we will keep talking in the meeting. So seems like for the current version, we are like all agree on API design and controller design. Like if you are interested, please review it. Any other questions? So that's great. And like as I said, for this week, we should have the controller and some like host paths and the GC CSI driver available. And let us know like what CSI driver you are more interested, and we can start working on that too. And hopefully we can have this alpha available as soon as possible. Any other issues we need to address for this meeting? It seems like we probably can end sooner than usual, yeah.
I think that's it. Thank you very much, Jing and Ching.
Okay, great.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.
Bye, thanks.
Thank you. Bye.